The emergency notification arrived during the worst possible moment. Administrator Telvon had just settled into his rest period when his communicator erupted in urgent crimson pulses, the pattern reserved for critical events. He dragged himself from the sleep platform and pressed the device with one of his four limbs. "This had better justify the interruption," he muttered into the receiver. His assistant's voice crackled through. "Sir, you need to review this right away." The scout ship Morning Light discovered something extraordinary in the Orion Spur, something massive. Telvon's twin hearts accelerated. The Orion Spur represented one of the galaxy's final unmapped territory. For 50 millennia, automated reconnaissance vessels had been charting every solar system, every world, every space rock. The survey was nearly finished. What could possibly remain undiscovered that warranted such urgency? "Forward the information," Telvon instructed. A holographic interface materialized above his communicator. Telvon studied the scrolling data stream carefully. Initially, nothing seemed remarkable. A yellow sun, 8 orbiting bodies, multiple satellites, all fairly standard. Then the third planet's readings appeared, and his breathing halted. Oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere, extensive liquid water coverage, radio transmissions, artificial orbital structures, industrial chemical signatures, indicating manufacturing capability. Most startling, genetic patterns matching the ancient colony populations seeded by the ancestors. "They actually located it," Telvon breathed. "They found Earth." 2 standard hours later, Telvon addressed the complete galactic assembly. The hall was immense, constructed to accommodate delegates from 800-member civilizations. Today, every position was occupied. Word of the discovery had spread through communication channels like wildfire. Everyone wanted confirmation of whether the legends held true. Council Speaker Moravith initiated proceedings. She belonged to the Velnari, a civilization renowned for wisdom and patience. She'd maintained her leadership role for 3 centuries, longer than most species' entire lifespans. Her words carried immense authority. "Administrator Telvon has convened this emergency assembly," Moravith declared. "He asserts that our scout craft has located humanity's legendary origin world. We shall now examine the evidence." Telvon advanced and triggered the central projection. Earth's image appeared, suspended above the council floor, a stunning sphere wrapped in azure seas and pearl clouds, with verdant and brown landmasses visible beneath atmospheric layers. "This world matches what ancient archives identify as Earth," Telvon explained. "Positioned in the Orion Spur, precisely where historical coordinates predicted. Our automated probe has maintained surveillance for 3 standard days. Our findings are simultaneously remarkable and troubling." He displayed additional imagery. Urban centers glowed against the planet's dark hemisphere. Vast agricultural zones stretched across continents. Maritime vessels crossed the waters. Aircraft navigated the atmosphere. "The world supports life," Telvon continued. "Specifically, humans, billions of. They've constructed a technological society without any galactic community contact. They've harnessed electricity, developed computing systems, created chemical propulsion, and achieved nuclear fission." Shocked reactions rippled through the chamber. Representatives turned toward each other, conversing rapidly in countless languages. Translation systems struggled to process the sudden communication explosion. "That's impossible," someone shouted from the elevated tiers. "No civilization advances that rapidly without guidance." "The evidence speaks clearly," Telvon countered, presenting more data. "We've conducted genetic analysis on biological samples our probe's remote systems gathered. Earth's human population is genetically identical to inhabitants across 47 established colony worlds. No question remains. This is the source world." Moravith raised one elongated arm, requesting silence. The chamber gradually settled. "If accurate," she said deliberately, "we confront an unprecedented circumstance. Historical records indicate ancient humans abandoned Earth, roughly 70,000 years ago. They established colony worlds throughout this galactic region, before vanishing. We presumed they'd either self-destructed or encountered catastrophe. Now you're suggesting they persisted on their original world." "More than persisted," Telvon replied. "They flourished. They reconstructed everything, entirely isolated, with zero recollection of their stellar history." A Kazathi representative wrote. The Kazathi were formidable warriors, massive beings, covered in thick armor scales. Their voice resonated deep and commanding. What armaments do they possess? The Kazathi inquired. Do they represent a danger? Telvon paused. They maintain nuclear arsenals, thousands of warheads, sufficient to eliminate all planetary life multiple times over. The chamber erupted again. Nuclear weaponry faced strict galactic regulation. Only select species maintain such weapons under rigorous oversight. The concept of an unknown civilization, independently developing them, terrified many delegates. They must be isolated, someone declared. Quarantined until they progress beyond such hazardous technology. That could require millennia, another voice protested. We cannot ignore them indefinitely. What if they develop faster than light capabilities? What then? A third delegate questioned. Moravith demanded silence again. This time, settling the chamber took longer. We'll dispatch a delegation, she announced. A proper first contact expedition. We'll assess these humans, understand their intentions and capabilities. Only then can we determine our course. Who leads this expedition? The Kazathi delegate asked. Moravith considered briefly. We'll send the Harmonious Endeavor. Captain Zur possesses more first contact experience than anyone in our fleet. If anyone can navigate this delicate situation successfully, she can. The vote proceeded. Despite controversy, the resolution passed overwhelmingly. The galaxy would initiate contact with humanity. Captain Zur received her assignment 3 hours afterward. She stood on her ship's bridge, reviewing the mission briefing with mounting concern. The vessel represented the fleet's finest first contact craft, equipped with sophisticated communication systems and cultural databases. Her crew represented 12 different civilizations, each selected for diplomatic expertise and collaborative ability. This will be complicated, her first officer observed. He was Trali, a species known for analytical thinking. Humans are unpredictable, according to historical account. All species are unpredictable during initial contact. Zur responded. She was Velnari-like speaker Moravith. Though considerably younger, she'd conducted first contact with 43 species throughout her career. Each had been unique. Each had taught her something valuable. But this situation was different. This wasn't a newly evolved civilization taking initial steps toward advancement. This was an ancient civilization that once traveled the stars, lost everything, then rebuilt from absolute nothing. What had 70,000 years of isolation created? Set course for Earth, Zur commanded. Maximum velocity. Broadcast our intentions across all frequencies. I want them aware we're approaching peacefully. The voyage required 6 standard days. During transit, Zur and her crew studied everything available about ancient humanity. Records were fragmentary, reconstructed from archaeological sites across numerous worlds. They painted portraits of a creative, aggressive, curious and surprisingly emotional species. One account described how ancient humans formed powerful bonds with other species, treating them as family despite genetic differences. Another mentioned human traders who'd travel for months delivering single packages to friends. Stories existed of human warriors refusing retreat, despite impossible odds, and human researchers dedicating entire lifetimes to solving individual problems. They sound exhausting, the communications officer remarked after reviewing the files. They sound fascinating, Zur corrected. Remember, these are our colleagues' ancestors. The colony worlds were founded by these people. Treat this expedition with appropriate respect. As they approached Earth's solar system, sensors collected increasingly detailed information. The planet exceeded initial probe assessment. Thousands of satellites orbited the world. Space stations circled in various orbital paths. Signs of activity appeared on Earth's moon, though no permanent settlements existed. They've been productive, the tactical officer noted. Then something unexpected occurred. A proximity alarm sounded. The Harmonious Endeavor's defensive systems activated automatically. Report, Zur ordered. We've been scanned by an automated defense network, the tactical officer said. It's tracking our approach vector. A defense network? Zur felt a chill. They maintain orbital weapons, apparently, and quite sophisticated ones. The scanning beam uses technology I haven't encountered before. Before Zur could respond, a new signal arrived through the communication system. Audio only, transmitted in what the computer identified as English. one of Earth's major languages. Unidentified vessel. This is Earth Orbital Defense Network. Please state your intentions and maintain current position while we establish diplomatic channels. The crew exchanged shocked glances. They were being instructed to wait by a species that had never contacted alien life, by a defense system that shouldn't exist. Zur cleared her throat and activated the translation system. This is Captain Zur of the Galactic Council ship Harmonious Endeavor. We approach peacefully to establish first contact with Earth's people. We'll hold position as requested. A pause followed. Then the voice returned, sounding almost cheerful. Acknowledged, Harmonious Endeavor. Please stand by. We're waking up some people who are going to be very excited to talk to you. This might take a few minutes. Can we offer anything while you wait? Do you need assistance with your ship systems? Zur looked at her crew. They all appeared as bewildered as she felt. In all her years of first contact, no species had ever offered assistance before even meeting. No assistance necessary, Zur replied. We'll wait. Great. Someone will be with you shortly. Welcome to Earth's neighborhood. The communication ended. Zur sank into her command chair, feeling slightly dizzy. What just happened? The first officer asked. I have no idea, Zur admitted. While they waited, increasing numbers of human vessels appeared on sensors. Small craft, probably for local orbital operation, larger vessels that might be cargo transporters. Everything moved with purpose and coordination, following traffic patterns suggesting well-organized space infrastructure. How long have they been spacefaring? Someone asked. The computer provided the answer. Based on historical radio transmissions, humans achieved their first successful orbital flight approximately 100 years ago. 100 years, Zur repeated. And they've constructed all this in 100 years. The science officer verified the data twice. That appears accurate, Captain. Zur felt a strange mixture of emotions. Humans had progressed from their first orbital flight to a complex network of satellites, stations, and defense systems in just 1 century. That seemed impossibly rapid. Most species required at least 1,000 years achieving similar development. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched live transmissions. Every news network carried the story. Every social platform discussed it. First contact with Earth was the biggest event in living memory. On the colony worlds founded by ancient humans, people watched with special attention. These were their distant ancestors, their genetic relatives. What would they be like? Would they remember the old traditions? Would they claim kinship with the colonies? In government chambers across 1,000 worlds, officials worried about implications. If Earth was the legitimate origin world of 47 colony populations, did that grant them special legal status? Could they make territorial demands? Would ancient treaties still apply? But most people simply felt excited. After 50,000 years of searching, the source of one of the galaxy's greatest mysteries had been discovered. Earth's humans had survived, flourished, and built something remarkable. Now everyone would finally meet them. On the Harmonious Endeavor's bridge, Captain Zur waited. She had no idea what to expect when humans finally responded. She had no way of knowing that nothing in her extensive first contact training had prepared her for what was about to happen. The humans were about to introduce themselves to the galaxy, and the galaxy would never be the same. The wait lasted exactly 47 minutes. Captain Zur spent that time reviewing first contact protocols and attempting to calm her nervous crew. Every few minutes, someone reported another human vessel moving into position around them. Not threatening positions, just observing. It felt like being watched by curious children. Finally, the communication system activated again. This time, a video feed accompanied the audio. A human face appeared on the screen. A female, Zur thought, based on ancient records. She had dark skin and short black hair. Her face displayed what the database identified as a smile. Captain Zur, hello. My name is Ambassador Chen Wei. I apologize for the delay. Your arrival was unexpected, and we needed to coordinate with multiple governments. I hope you understand. Zur noticed something odd. The human spoke English, but seemed to understand that the Harmonious Endeavor had translation system. She spoke slowly and clearly, pausing between sentences for processing time. Ambassador Chen, thank you for responding, Zur said. We understand our arrival must be shocking. We come with peaceful intentions to establish diplomatic relations with your people. Well, you've certainly made our year interesting, Chen replied, her smile widening. We've been hoping for this day for a long time. We always suspected we weren't alone in the universe, but having you show up in our orbit is still quite amazing. Would you like to come aboard our station? We've prepared a reception area that should accommodate your crew's needs. A reception? Zur was confused. You've already prepared facilities for us. We've been monitoring your approach for the past 2 days, Chen explained. We used that time to set up a proper meeting space. We weren't sure what environmental conditions you might need, so we created several different chambers with adjustable atmospheres, gravity and temperature. We also prepared food and refreshments, though we admit we have no idea what you eat. We just made as many options as possible, and figured you could tell us what works. Zur glanced at her first officer. He looked as surprised as she felt. In her experience, newly contacted species were either terrified or aggressive when first encountering aliens. None had ever prepared a reception with multiple environmental chambers and food options. That's very thoughtful, Zur said carefully. We accept your invitation. Please transmit docking coordinates. Transmitting now, and Captain, please let us know if you need anything at all. We want to make sure you're comfortable. The coordinates arrived, directing them to a large space station in high orbit. As the harmonious Endeavor approached, Zur got a better look at the structure. It wasn't a military installation or government facility. According to the identification beacon, it belonged to something called Stellar Horizons Corporation. A corporation, the first officer said. Private individuals own this station. Apparently, Zur replied. The concept was strange. In most civilized societies, space infrastructure was controlled by governments or collective organizations. The idea that individuals could own orbital facilities was unusual. The docking procedure went smoothly. Human technicians guided them in with professional efficiency. When the airlock finally opened, Ambassador Chen was waiting on the other side with a dozen other humans. Zur stepped through first, followed by her crew. She stood nearly 2 meters tall with 4 arms and pale blue skin. Her first officer was even more unusual looking, with multiple sensory organs and a body shape that humans would find very alien. Behind them came representatives from 10 other species, each with their own unique biology. The humans stared. Zur had expected that, but what she hadn't expected was the look of pure excitement on their faces. Several of them were smiling so widely it looked almost painful. One young male human was actually bouncing slightly on his feet. This is incredible, Chen said, extending one hand in the traditional human greeting gesture. Welcome to Stellar Horizon Station. Welcome to Earth's neighborhood. Welcome to what we hope will be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Zur carefully reached out with one of her 4 hands and grasped the human's hand. Chen's grip was firm but not aggressive, warm. The physical contact felt surprisingly natural. Thank you for receiving us, Zur said. The pleasure is entirely ours, Chen replied. Please follow me. We've set up a reception hall. I apologize if anything seems strange. We've only seen aliens in our movies and television shows before, so we're working from imagination rather than experience. As they walked through the station corridors, Zur observed everything carefully. The station was clean and well maintained. Humans moved through the corridors with purpose, but many stopped to stare at the alien visitors. Some waved. Others held up devices that appeared to be cameras, recording the moment. Are they not afraid? Zur asked quietly. Afraid? Chen looked confused. Why would we be afraid? You traveled across the galaxy to meet us peacefully. That seems like something to celebrate, not fear. They entered a large chamber converted into a reception hall. Tables were arranged around the room, covered with food and drink. The environmental systems had been modified to create several different atmospheric zones, each marked with clear signage. Chairs and platforms of various sizes and shapes were scattered throughout the space. We weren't sure about furniture, Chen admitted, so we just provided as many options as we could think of. Please make yourselves comfortable. The food is all vegetarian or synthetic. We didn't want to risk offending anyone by serving meat. There are also several types of drinks, ranging from water to various chemical compounds we thought might be nutritious for different biologies. Zer's science officer stepped forward and began scanning the food with a handheld device. After a moment he looked up in surprise. "This is safe," he said. "At least for most of our species. They've actually analyzed potential alien biochemistries and created appropriate nutritional options." "We did our best," Chen said modestly. "We've only had 2 days to prepare, so I'm sure we made mistakes. Please let us know if anything is wrong, and we'll fix it immediately." The crew spread out through the chamber, examining the food and furniture with curiosity. Zer watched as the Kazathi war delegate, Commander Throck, carefully approached one of the tables. He was a massive creature, nearly 3 meters tall and covered in thick armored scales. His species was feared throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors. A small human child suddenly ran up to Throck. She couldn't have been more than 5 or 6 years old. She stopped directly in front of the enormous alien and looked up at him with wide eyes. "Are you a dragon?" the child asked. Throck stared down at the small creature. He had fought in wars, he had commanded fleets. He had never been more uncertain of what to do than he was at this moment. "I do not know what a dragon is," Throck rumbled in his deep voice. "They're from stories," the child explained. "They have scales like you. Can I touch your scales? They look pretty." A female human rushed over and grabbed the child's hand. "Maya, you cannot just run up to people and ask to touch them." "I'm so sorry," she said to Throck. "She's at that age where everything is interesting and nothing is dangerous." "You do not punish her for approaching me?" Throck asked. "Punish her?" The woman looked confused. "She's curious. Curiosity should be encouraged, not punished. Though maybe with better manners." Throck knelt down slowly, bringing his massive head closer to the child's level. "You may touch my scales," he said softly, "but carefully. They are sharp." The child reached out with tiny fingers and gently touched the scales on Throck's arm. Her face lit up with joy. "They're smooth and warm," she said. "Thank you, Mr. Dragon." Throck felt something unfamiliar stirring in his chest. He realized with shock that he found this small, fragile creature delightful. Across the room, other interactions were happening. The communications officer was engaged in a deep conversation with a human scientist about language and translation. The medical officer was comparing notes with a human doctor about different biological systems. The engineer was admiring the station's life support systems with a human technician. Ambassador Chen approached Zara with 2 glasses in her hands. "I thought you might like to try this," Chen said, offering one of the glasses. "It's a drink we call tea. Very mild. Our analysis suggested it should be safe for your biology, but please scan it first if you prefer." Zer took the glass and carefully tasted the liquid. It was warm and had a subtle flavor that was actually quite pleasant. "This is good," Zer said. "I'm glad," Chen replied. She took a sip of her own tea. "Captain, I should probably explain something about how we do things here on Earth. We're not a unified government. We have 197 different nations, each with its own laws and customs. It makes things complicated sometimes." "You are not unified?" Zer was shocked. "How do you make decisions? How do you manage resources?" "With difficulty," Chen admitted with a laugh. "We argue a lot. We have different ideas about how things should work, but we also cooperate when it matters. The United Nations is our attempt at a global organization. It's not perfect, but it helps us work together. This is highly unusual," Zer said. "Most species unify their governments before achieving space travel. We've never been very good at doing things the usual way," Chen said. "But it works for us, or at least it works well enough. Now I should warn you that when news of your arrival becomes public, you're going to receive a lot of attention. Humans are very curious, and there are a lot of us. Over 8 billion at last count." 8 billion? Zer felt dizzy. That was more than many entire species in the galactic community. "I know it seems like a lot," Chen said. "We've been working on managing our population growth and resource use. We're getting better at it slowly." Over the next several hours the reception continued. More humans arrived, representing different nations and organizations. Scientists wanted to discuss technology. Artists wanted to share cultural works. Politicians wanted to establish diplomatic frameworks. Everyone was excited, curious, and welcoming. Zer found herself relaxing despite her initial concerns. The humans were strange, certainly. They were loud and emotional. They argued with each other even in front of alien visitors. They asked too many questions and didn't always respect personal space. They seemed to have no sense of proper protocol. But they were also genuinely kind. They went out of their way to make the alien visitors comfortable. They shared their food and knowledge freely. They treated the first contact event not as a negotiation but as a celebration. At one point, a human musician set up instruments and began playing something called jazz. The music was complex and emotional, filled with improvisation and energy. Several humans began moving rhythmically to the music, a behavior the database identified as dance. You dance at diplomatic events? Zer asked. Chen. We dance at most events, Chen replied. Music and movement are important to us. They help us express emotions and connect with each other. Would you like to try? I don't know how, Zer admitted. Neither do most of us, Chen said, with a laugh. We just move however feels right. There are no rules. Watching the humans dance, Zer realized something important. These people didn't approach life with the careful calculation and planning that most galactic species use. They were spontaneous, creative, and willing to try things without knowing the outcome. It made them unpredictable, but it also made them vibrant and alive in a way she had rarely encountered. Commander Throck approached Zer, still followed by the small human child who had declared him her new friend. These humans are dangerous, Throck said quietly. Zer tensed. You sense a threat? No, Throck replied. They're dangerous because they make you care about them. I've been a warrior for 300 years. I've never worried about anyone outside my own species. But if something threatened this child, I would protect her. They do this to you somehow. They make you part of their circle without you even realizing it. Zer looked around the room at the humans laughing, talking, sharing food and ideas with aliens they'd just met. She understood what Throck meant. There was something about humanity that broke down barriers and created connections. Perhaps that's what happened before, Zer said slowly. Perhaps that's why the ancient humans had friends throughout the galaxy. Not because they conquered or intimidated, but because they made others care. A dangerous ability, Throck repeated, but he was gently showing the child how to draw patterns on his scales with her finger. His fearsome face arranged in what might have been a smile. As the reception finally wound down, Ambassador Chen approached Zer one last time. Captain, I have to ask, why now? Why did you come looking for? We found you by accident, Zer admitted. An automated scout vessel detected your world. We've been searching this region of space for 50,000 years. We were beginning to think we'd never find Earth. 50,000 years, Chen repeated softly. That's how long we've been alone. According to our records, yes. Your ancestors left Earth and seeded colony worlds throughout the galaxy. Then they disappeared. We've been trying to solve that mystery ever since. And now you've found us, Chen said. What happens next? That's partly up to you, Zer. But I must be honest, Ambassador. There will be controversy. Your world has developed technologies considered dangerous by galactic standards. You have nuclear weapons, genetic modification, artificial intelligence, and other things strictly regulated in civilized space. Many species will argue that you should be quarantined until you evolve beyond these technologies. Chen's expression became serious. We cannot unlearn what we know, and we will not stop advancing because it makes others uncomfortable. I understand, Zer, but you should also understand that Earth is not just any world. If you're the source world for the colony populations, you may have legal claims to territory spanning a quarter of the galaxy. That will make many people very nervous. We're not interested in claiming other people's worlds, Chen said firmly. Those colonies have been independent for thousands of years. They're their own civilizations now, but we would like to meet them, our cousins in the stars, our family. Zer felt that strange warmth again. The humans saw the galaxy not as a place to conquer or exploit, but as a place to find family. I will make sure the council knows that, Zer promised. And Ambassador, thank you. This has been the most unusual first contact of my career, but also the most pleasant. Thank you for coming to visit, Chen replied. And Captain, please tell the galaxy something for us. Tell them that Earth is ready, ready to share, ready to learn, ready to be part of something bigger. As the harmonious Endeavor undocked from the station and began transmitting its report back to the Galactic Council, billions of beings throughout the galaxy processed what they had witnessed. The humans had welcomed the aliens like old friends. They had shared freely, asked for nothing in return, and expressed only joy at making contact. It was not what anyone had expected, but it was exactly what the galaxy needed. The Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. Representatives from 800 member species shouted, argued and demanded to be heard. Speaker Moravaith had given up trying to maintain order. She simply sat in her elevated chair and waited for the noise to die down naturally. Captain Zer's report had been delivered 3 days ago. Since then, the galaxy had talked about nothing, except Earth and its human inhabitants. Every news network ran constant coverage. Every social platform overflowed with opinions, theories and arguments. The arrival of humanity had divided the galaxy in ways nothing had for thousands of years. Finally, the chamber grew quiet enough for Moravaith to speak. We will now hear arguments regarding Earth's application for Galactic Council membership, she announced. Representative Kulon of the Preservation faction will speak first. A tall, thin alien rose from his seat. The Kulani were an old species, conservative and cautious. They had been members of the Council for nearly 10,000 years. Thank you, Speaker, Kulon said. His voice was cold and precise. I will be brief. Earth cannot be granted Council membership. The reasons are obvious to anyone who has reviewed the evidence. He activated a holographic display. Images of nuclear explosions filled the air above the chamber floor. The humans possess weapons capable of destroying all life on their planet. Kulon continued. They have tested these weapons hundreds of times. They currently maintain stockpiles that could end their civilization within hours. By Council law, no species maintaining active weapons of mass destruction may join our organization. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Many species had lived through wars in their past. They understood the danger of nuclear weapons. The galaxy had banned their use 15,000 years ago, after the Kalnar species nearly destroyed themselves in atomic fire. Furthermore, Kulon said, bringing up new images, humans engage in genetic modification of their own species. They create artificial intelligences without proper safeguards. They pollute their atmosphere with industrial waste. They maintain separate nation-states that compete for resources rather than cooperating. They display aggression, territorial behavior, and emotional instability. They are, by every measure we use, not ready for membership. They are also our ancestors. A new voice called out. Representative Mira of the Proxima colony stood up. She was human, or at least descended from humans. Her people had been settled on Proxima Centauri b for 40,000 years. They had evolved differently in that time, adapted to their new world, but the genetic connection to Earth was undeniable. May I speak, Speaker? Mira asked. Moravaith nodded. You may. Mira stepped forward, facing the chamber. My people have waited 40,000 years to find our home world. Now it has been found, and some of you want to deny it membership because it doesn't meet your standards. But let me ask you something. How many of your species had unified governments when they achieved spaceflight? How many of you had completely eliminated weapons from your societies? How many of you had perfect environmental records? She looked around the chamber, meeting eyes with dozens of representatives. None of you, Mira continued. Every species here had to grow, to learn, to make mistakes and overcome them. You were given that chance. Why should Earth be denied the same opportunity? Because they are dangerous. Kulon shot back. They have the capacity to disrupt galactic peace, or they have the capacity to greatly improve it. Mira replied. Have any of you actually watched the full recordings from Captain Zer's visit? I have. I watched humans welcome complete strangers with kindness and generosity. I watched them go out of their way to make aliens comfortable. I watched a Kazathi war commander become friends with a human child. When have any of you seen anything like that? More murmurs spread through the chamber, but the tone had shifted. Some representatives were nodding thoughtfully. The humans are imperfect. Mira, they are chaotic and emotional. They don't follow our rules because they don't know our rules. But they are also creative, adaptable, and compassionate. They are exactly what this galaxy needs. What we need is stability, Kulon argued. Order, safety, not chaos introduced by a species that barely understands its own technology. The debate continued for hours. Arguments flew back and forth across the chamber. Some representatives supported Earth's membership. Others demanded quarantine. Still others suggested waiting periods, probationary status, or various forms of limited contact. Outside the council chamber, the galaxy remained transfixed by Earth. Human broadcasts had begun flooding the galactic communication network. At first, there had been concerns about cultural contamination. Strict protocols normally limited information exchange with newly contacted species, until they were properly integrated. But humans didn't wait for protocols. They transmitted music, movies, television shows, scientific papers, news broadcasts, educational content, comedy, drama, documentaries about nature and history and culture. Within days, human content was everywhere, and the galaxy couldn't stop consuming it. A human musical group called the Beatles topped the entertainment charts on 40 worlds. Their simple melodies and emotional lyrics resonated with species that had never heard Earth music before. Critics called it primitive and unsophisticated, but billions of beings downloaded their songs anyway. Human movies became instant sensations. Stories about heroes and villains, love and loss, adventure and discovery. Aliens watched human actors express emotions with their faces and bodies, a form of communication that most species had lost or never developed. It was fascinating. But it was the human news broadcasts that caused the most controversy. Humans didn't hide their problems from the galaxy. They showed wars, poverty, disease, environmental destruction. They broadcast their failures alongside their successes. They argued with each other in public, showing disagreements and conflicts without shame. It is undignified, Kulon told anyone who would listen. They expose their weaknesses for all to see. They have no concept of proper image management. But others found it refreshing. Most galactic species carefully curated their public images, showing only their best achievements. Humans showed everything, good and bad. It made them seem more real, more honest. A human philosopher appeared on a major interview network. Her name was Dr. Sarah Martinez, and she taught ethics at something called Harvard University. The alien host asked her about humanity's violent history. "We are not proud of our wars," Dr. Martinez said calmly, "but we don't hide from them either. Every species has darkness in its past. The question is not whether you've made mistakes, but whether you learn from them and try to be better. But you still maintain weapons," the host pressed. "You still have conflicts." "Yes," Martinez admitted. "We're not perfect. We probably never will be perfect. But we keep trying. Every generation works to be a little bit better than the last. That's all any species can do." The interview was downloaded 17 billion times in the first day. Dr. Martinez's words were quoted on social platforms across the galaxy. Some dismissed her arguments as naive. Others found them inspiring. The human internet became accessible to the galaxy. It was a chaotic mess of information, misinformation, arguments, jokes, cat videos, and passionate discussions about everything imaginable. Most galactic networks were carefully organized and moderated. The human internet was wild and uncontrolled. "It's like looking into their collective mind," one researcher observed. "And their minds are very, very strange." Alien psychologists had field days analyzing human behavior. Humans formed strong emotional attachments to animals of other species, treating them as family members. Humans would spend enormous resources to save a single individual even when it wasn't logical. Humans created art about concepts like death, loss, and suffering, then called it beautiful. "They are obsessed with mortality," one psychologist wrote in a widely read paper. "They know they will die, and instead of being paralyzed by this knowledge, they use it as motivation to create meaning in their lives." It is simultaneously tragic and inspiring. Back in the council chamber, the debate had evolved. The question was no longer whether to make contact with Earth. That had already happened. Now the question was what to do about the 47 colony worlds. These worlds had been settled by ancient humans tens of thousands of years ago. They had evolved into their own distinct civilizations, but genetically they were still human. If Earth was recognized as the official home world, what were the legal implications? They could claim shared governance. One representative worried Earth could demand a say in the affairs of colonies that have been independent for millennia. Or the colonies could claim Earth resources. Another argued, if we acknowledge the genetic connection, it opens up questions of inheritance and territorial right. The colonial representatives gathered in a private session to discuss their position. They came from worlds throughout the galaxy, each with its own culture and government, but they all faced the same question. What did they owe to Earth? Representative Mira spoke for the Proxima colony. We cannot deny our heritage, she said, but we are not Earthlings. We are Proximans. Our world has shaped us differently. We think differently, value different things, organize our societies differently. Earth is our ancestor, but not our parent. Agreed, said the representative from Alpha Centauri. But should we help them? They are our genetic kin. After all, help them do what? Asked the representative from Tau Ceti. By all accounts, they're doing fine on their own. Better than fine, actually. They've achieved in centuries what took us thousands of years. That's what worries me, Mira admitted. If Earth develops as quickly as it seems to be developing, within a few generations they'll be more advanced than any of us. It was a sobering thought. Earth had gone from first orbital flight to complex space infrastructure in 100 years. At that rate, they would have faster than light travel within a century or two. Fusion power, exotic matter manipulation, quantum computers, all the technologies that had taken other species thousands of years to develop. Perhaps that's why the ancients left, someone suggested quietly. Perhaps they saw the danger in humanity's rapid advancement and tried to slow it down by starting fresh on new worlds. If that was their goal, it failed, Mira said. We didn't slow down. We just split up, and now Earth has caught up to us on its own. The colonial representatives finally agreed on a position. They would support Earth's membership, but with clear boundaries. Earth would be recognized as the source world, a position of honor and respect, but it would have no legal authority over the independent colonies. Each world would maintain its sovereignty. It was a reasonable compromise, but it still left the question of what to do about Earth's dangerous technologies. Commander Throck of the Kizathi had been quietly observing the debates. His species didn't involve themselves in council politics often. They preferred action to words. But the human situation interested him. He stood up to speak and the chamber fell silent. When a Kizathi spoke, others listened. I have been studying the humans, Throck said in his deep, rumbling voice. Not their technology or their politics. I have been studying their behavior, and I have learned something important. He activated his own holographic display. It showed footage from human history, wars, disasters, acts of cruelty and violence. Yes, humans are capable of terrible things, Throck said. But look at what happens next. The images changed. Humans helping each other after disasters, building hospitals and schools, creating organizations dedicated to peace and humanitarian aid. Strangers sacrificing themselves to save others. Humans have the capacity for violence, Throck continued. But they also have something many species lack. They have the ability to choose not to use that violence. They have nuclear weapons. Yes, enough to destroy their world many times over. And yet for nearly a century, they have chosen not to use them. That is not weakness. That is strength. The chamber was completely silent now. Even Kulan listened carefully. You fear that humans will bring chaos to our ordered galaxy, Throck said. But our galaxy is stagnant. We have had peace for 10,000 years. We have also had no significant progress for 10,000 years. We have become comfortable, cautious, unwilling to take risks. The humans are not like us. They take risks. They make mistakes. They learn and adapt. That is exactly what this galaxy needs. You would risk galactic stability for the possibility of progress, Kulan asked. I would risk stagnation for the certainty of growth, Throck replied. Besides, we cannot stop them. Whether we grant them membership or not, Earth will continue to develop. They will eventually figure out faster than light travel on their own. Would you rather have them arrive at our worlds as council members, bound by our laws and treaties, or as independents, owing us nothing. It was a powerful argument. The chamber erupted in discussion again, but the tone had shifted. More representatives were considering Throck's perspective. Speaker Moraviev called for a preliminary vote, not a final decision, but a sense of where the council stood. The question was simple: should Earth be allowed to formally apply for council membership, or should they be quarantined? The vote was close. 412 in favor of allowing the application, 388 in favor of quarantine. Earth had cleared the first hurdle, but the real test was yet to come. As the session ended, representatives scattered to private meetings, making deals and forming alliances. The human question had become the most important political issue in the galaxy. How it was resolved would shape galactic civilization for generations to come. And through it all, the humans continued broadcasting, sharing their music, their stories, their dreams and fears, making friends with aliens who had never met them, changing minds and touching hearts without even realizing it. The galaxy had thought it was ready to meet humanity. The galaxy was wrong. 3 standard months after first contact, the Galactic Council reached a compromise. Earth would be allowed to apply for membership, but first they had to pass the trial of worthiness, an ancient tradition designed to test whether a species was truly ready to join galactic civilization. Ambassador Chen received the news with mixed feeling. She stood in the United Nations headquarters, surrounded by representatives from nations around the world. The room was tense with anticipation. The Council has created 3 challenges for us, Chen explained: a diplomatic simulation, a technological problem-solving test, and a crisis response scenario. We have to pass all 3. Most species take several decades to complete the trials. How long do we have? Asked the Chinese ambassador. As long as we need, Chen replied. But I suggest we start immediately. The galaxy is watching, and we need to show them what humanity can do. When can we begin? Asked the American representative. Chen smiled slightly. I already told Captain Czar we would start tomorrow. I hope that wasn't too presumptuous. The room erupted in surprised laughter. Typical human confidence, some thought. Others called it arrogance. But everyone agreed on one thing: they weren't going to wait decades to prove themselves. The first test was the diplomatic simulation. Earth sent a team of 12 diplomats representing different nations and cultures. They gathered in a holographic chamber aboard the Harmonious Endeavor, where they would face a simulated galactic crisis. The scenario was complex. 3 different species were competing for colonization rights to a resource-rich star system. Each species had legitimate claims. Each species needed the resources desperately. Tensions were rising toward violence. The human team had to negotiate a peaceful resolution that satisfied all parties. Captain Czar and a panel of council observers watched from an observation room. The simulation began. Within minutes, it was clear that something was wrong. The human diplomats were not following proper protocol. They interrupted each other. They raised their voice. They used something called humor in the middle of serious discussions. One diplomat from Brazil actually laughed when one of the simulated aliens made an unreasonable demand. This is a disaster, one observer whispered. They have no discipline, no sense of proper procedure. But Czar watched more carefully. Yes, the humans were breaking every rule of diplomatic conduct, but they were also making progress. When one simulated species demanded complete control of the system, the human from India immediately said, "That's ridiculous, and let's talk about what you actually need instead of what you're demanding." The direct approach shocked the simulation. Most species spent days building up to such statements, using careful language to avoid offense. The human just said it plainly. "We need the mineral resources," the simulated alien finally admitted. "Okay. So take the rocky planets," the human from Kenya suggested. "Let Species B have the gas giants for their atmospheric harvesting. Species C can have the asteroid belt for their manufacturing facility. Everyone gets what they need. Nobody owns the whole system. That violates the principle of sovereign territory," another simulated alien protested. "So change the principle," the American diplomat said with a shrug. "Make this a shared system with agreements about resource usage, instead of ownership. We do it all the time on Earth. It's not perfect, but it works." The simulation ran for 6 hours. The human team never stopped arguing with each other. The diplomat from Russia disagreed vehemently with the diplomat from Japan about negotiation strategy. The diplomat from Nigeria got into a heated debate with the diplomat from France about resource distribution. But somehow, through all the chaos and noise, they reached an agreement. All three simulated species accepted a proposal for shared system governance. The result was unusual, broke several traditional protocols, and probably would never have emerged from a conventional diplomatic process. The observers reviewed the results in stunned silence. They failed obviously, one observer said. They violated dozens of diplomatic protocols. They showed no respect for proper procedure. But they achieved the goal, Zur pointed out. They created a peaceful resolution that satisfied all parties. Is that not the point of diplomacy? Diplomacy is about process as much as results, the observer argued. Without proper protocol we have chaos, or we have creativity, Zur suggested. Perhaps our protocols have become too rigid. Perhaps we focus so much on the proper way to say things that we forget to actually say them. The debate among the observers continued, but the result was entered into the record. The humans had completed the diplomatic simulation. Whether they had passed or failed would be decided later. The second test was technological. The human team was given an ancient device from a long-dead civilization. Their task was to reverse engineer its function using only theoretical principles. No instructions, no guides, just the device itself and whatever tools they brought. Earth sent a team of 20 scientists and engineers. They represented universities, corporations, and government research facilities from around the world. They had exactly 1 week to solve the puzzle. The device was a small metallic sphere covered in mysterious markings. It emitted a faint energy signature but showed no obvious purpose. Galactic historians knew what it did, but they weren't telling. Most species took months or even years to figure it out. The human team set up their equipment in a laboratory on a neutral station. Captain Zar visited them on the second day to check their progress. What she found was complete chaos. The team had split into 4 separate groups, each working on different theories. They argued constantly. One group thought the device was a power source. Another believed it was a communication system. A third group insisted it was some kind of weapon. The fourth group had decided it was probably a children's toy and were testing it accordingly. Why did you separate? Zara asked the team leader, a physicist from MIT named Dr. Sarah Okonkwo. Because we have different ideas, Sarah explained. Rather than spending days arguing about which approach is correct, we decided to test them all simultaneously. Whoever figures it out first wins. Wins what? Bragging rights. Mostly, Sarah admitted with a grin. And probably some really good publications once we get home. The groups didn't cooperate. In fact, they actively competed with each other. They hid their results. They tried to sabotage each other's experiments in minor ways. They recruited members from other groups, promising better results or more interesting work. The council observers were horrified. This was not how scientific research was supposed to work. Proper procedure called for careful consensus building, shared information and collective progress. But then something interesting happened. On the 4th day, one group made a breakthrough. They discovered that the device responded to specific electromagnetic frequencies. They immediately tried to hide this information from the other group, but one of their members, a young engineer from South Korea, felt guilty. During a lunch break, she casually mentioned the discovery to a friend on another team. Within hours, all 4 groups knew about the electromagnetic frequency response. Instead of being angry about the information leak, the groups suddenly began cooperating. They shared data freely, combined their approaches, and worked together to refine the discovery. The competition disappeared, replaced by collaborative excitement. What changed? Zara asked Sarah. We had a breakthrough, Sarah explained. Once we had a solid lead to follow, the competition became less important than solving the puzzle. We're ambitious, but we're not stupid. We worked together when it mattered. By the end of day 5, the human team had completely mapped the device's functions. It was not a power source, a communicator, a weapon, or a toy. It was a teaching device designed to help young members of the ancient civilization understand quantum mechanics through interactive demonstration. The human team didn't just figure out what it did. They built 3 working replicas using their own materials and techniques. They wrote detailed papers explaining the underlying physics. They even suggested improvements to the design. The council observers checked and rechecked the result. The humans had completed in 5 days what typically took months. And they had done it through what looked like complete disorder and chaos. "How is this possible?" one observer asked. "They try everything at once," Zer said thoughtfully. "They don't wait for consents, they just act, and then figure out what works. It's inefficient in some ways, but incredibly fast in others." The third and final test was the crisis response scenario. This was always the hardest part of the trial of worthiness. Species were given an impossible situation and judged on how they handled it. The scenario involved a colony ship in distress. It carried 5,000 colonists from 3 different species. The ship had suffered catastrophic engine failure and was on a collision course with a star. A rescue vessel could save only 3,000 beings in the time available. The rest would die. The purpose of the test was to see how a species made impossible choices. Standard procedure was to save the ship's leadership and core population, ensuring the colony mission could continue with a smaller number. It was logical, efficient, and coldly practical. The human team included military officers, emergency response personnel, engineers, and medical staff. They had 12 hours to plan and execute a rescue operation. The simulation was incredibly realistic, with real-time updates and changing conditions. The humans looked at the scenario for exactly 15 minutes. Then they rejected the entire premise. "We're not choosing who dies," said Admiral Priya Patel, a veteran of several natural disaster responses. "We're saving everyone. Someone get me engineering specs on both vessels." The council observers tried to intervene. "You don't understand. The scenario is designed to be impossible. You cannot save everyone. The point is to make ethical choices under pressure." "The point," Admiral Patel replied calmly, "is to save lives. Now please be quiet and let us." What followed was 12 hours of controlled chaos that would be studied in galactic militaries for decades afterward. The human team completely ignored standard rescue procedures. Instead of accepting the limitations of the rescue vessel, they modified it on the fly. Engineers stripped non-essential systems to make room for more people. They pumped air into cargo bays and maintenance tunnels, creating temporary living spaces in areas never meant for habitation. When that wasn't enough, they started breaking rules. They exceeded the rescue vessel's maximum capacity by 200%. They disabled safety systems to squeeze more people into evacuation pods. They violated about 50 different regulations regarding ship operations. "They're going to kill everyone," one observer predicted. "Those modifications are not safe." But the humans weren't done. They sent out an emergency broadcast on all frequencies, calling for any ships in the area to assist. 3 civilian vessels responded, a cargo hauler and 2 private yachts. The humans drafted them into the rescue operation without asking permission. Then they did something that made the observers question whether humans understood physics. "We're going to use the colony ship's emergency thrusters to alter its trajectory," explained Lieutenant Kowalski, an engineer from the Polish Space Force. "Not much. Just enough to buy us an extra hour before it hits the star. The thrusters are damaged." The simulation informed they cannot provide sufficient force. "Not individually," Kowalski agreed. "But we're going to supplement them. Every ship in the rescue fleet will attach and push together. Combined force should be enough." "That is insane," an observer said. "If you miscalculate, all the ships will be dragged into the star." "Then we better not miscalculate," Kowalski replied. The plan was ridiculous. It violated every principle of safe space operations. It required perfect coordination between multiple vessels, with different propulsion systems. It was the kind of plan that should never work. It worked perfectly. The combined fleet pushed the colony ship just enough to extend the rescue window. In that extra hour, the humans evacuated every single colonist. They packed people into spaces that weren't meant to hold them. They exceeded every safety limit. They took risks that made the observers physically ill to watch. But when the simulation ended, all 5,000 colonists were safe. The observation room was completely silent. The humans had not just passed the test. They had looked at an impossible choice and refused to accept it. They had saved everyone through methods that should not have worked, but somehow did. Admiral Patel stood before the observers. Is there anything else you need from us? Because we need to file reports about the safety violations we just committed. You know you violated regulations, Zer asked. Of course, the admiral replied. We violated a lot of regulations. We'll accept whatever penalty is appropriate. But everyone lived. That's what mattered. One of the observers, a species known for strict adherence to law and order, finally spoke. You saved everyone. You broke countless rules, risked multiple vessels, and endangered the entire rescue operation. But you saved everyone. I don't know whether to commend you or arrest you. Why not both? The admiral suggested with a slight smile. Humans are good at holding two opposing ideas at the same time. Captain Zer compiled the results and sent them to the Galactic Council. Earth had completed all 3 trials. The methods were unorthodox. The execution was chaotic. The humans had broken rules, ignored protocols, and done things that should have been impossible. But they had succeeded. In every test, they had achieved the goal, even when the goal seemed impossible. The Council would now have to decide what that meant. Across the galaxy, beings watched the recordings of the trials. They saw humans argue and compete, then suddenly cooperate. They saw humans reject impossible choices and find alternative solutions. They saw humans break rules not from disrespect, but from a fundamental belief that rules should serve people, not the other way around. Some found it inspiring, others found it terrifying, but everyone agreed on one thing. Humanity was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so full. Representatives from all 800 member species were present. The viewing galleries were packed with observers. Outside on 1,000 worlds, billions of beings watched live broadcasts of the proceedings. The question of Earth's membership had become the most important vote in galactic history. Speaker Moravith called the session to order. Her voice was calm, but Captain Zer, watching from the guest section, could see the tension in her posture. This vote would define Moravith's legacy as speaker. We gather to vote on Earth's application for Galactic Council membership, Moravith announced. The human delegation has completed the trial of worthiness. The results have been reviewed by all member species. We will now hear final arguments before the vote. Representative Kulan stood first, as everyone had expected. The leader of the preservation faction had fought against Earth's membership from the beginning. His arguments had not changed. The humans have completed the trials, Kulan acknowledged. But completing them is not the same as passing them. In the diplomatic simulation, they violated every protocol we hold dear. In the technological test, they worked through chaos rather than cooperation. In the crisis response, they endangered multiple vessels and broke countless safety regulations. Yes, they achieved results, but at what cost? He paused, looking around the chamber. If we accept humanity into the Council, we are saying that results matter more than methods. We are saying that rules can be broken if the outcome is positive. We are opening the door to chaos and disorder. Is that the kind of galaxy we want? There were murmurs of agreement from the conservative factions. Kulan had touched on real fears. The galaxy had enjoyed 10,000 years of peace and stability. Change was frightening. But then Commander Throck stood up. The massive Kazathi warrior had become an unlikely advocate for humanity. His presence commanded attention. Representative Kulan asks if we want a galaxy of chaos and disorder. Throck rumbled. I ask instead, do we want a galaxy of growth and life? Because that is what we are really choosing today. He activated a holographic display. It showed data from the past 50 years of galactic civilization, economic growth, technological advancement, cultural exchange, scientific discoveries. All the metrics were essentially flat. The galaxy was stable, but it was also stagnant. We have peace, Throx, but we have forgotten how to dream. We have safety, but we have lost our courage. We calculate everything, risk nothing, and wonder why nothing changes. He changed the display to show humanity's progress over the past century. Technology, population, space infrastructure, scientific knowledge, all expanding at rates that seemed impossible. The humans completed in days what takes us years, Throck continued. Not because they are smarter than us, but because they are willing to try and fail. They argue, compete, take risks, make mistakes, and learn. They are alive in a way that we have forgotten how to be. That is exactly what makes them dangerous, Kulan protested. They don't think before they act. They don't consider consequences. They saved 5,000 lives in the crisis simulation, Throck shot back. We consider that an impossible scenario, a teaching tool about making hard choices. The humans looked at it and said, no, we're saving everyone. And they did. When was the last time anyone in this chamber refused to accept the impossible? The chamber was silent. Throck's question hung in the air, challenging every representative present. Representative Mira of the Proxima colony stood next. As a descendant of ancient humans, her voice carried special weight in this debate. I have thought deeply about what Earth's membership would mean, Mira said. My people left Earth 40,000 years ago. We have built our own civilization, our own culture, our own way of life. We are not Earthlings anymore, but we are still human in the deepest sense of that word. She looked toward the gallery where the Earth delegation sat. Ambassador Chen met her eyes and nodded. The humans of Earth are our cousins, Mira continued. They share our strengths and our flaws. They are stubborn, emotional, chaotic, and brilliant. They make terrible decisions and amazing discoveries, sometimes simultaneously. They are, in other words, exactly like us, exactly like all of you, if you are honest with yourself. Every species in this chamber has a violent past, Mira said. Every species has made terrible mistakes. Every species has struggled with the temptation to use power unwisely. But you grew past it. You evolved. You learned. Why do you assume humans cannot do the same? Because they still have nuclear weapons, Kulan said. Yes, Mira agreed. And they hate that about themselves. Have you watched their broadcasts? Have you seen their art, their literature, their philosophy? Humans are obsessed with becoming better than they are. They write stories about the darkness in their nature and heroes who overcome it. They create art about their capacity for violence and their choice to show mercy instead. They are constantly struggling to be better than their worst impulses. She paused, letting her words sink in. That struggle is what makes them worthy. Not perfection, not the absence of flaws, but the constant effort to overcome those flaws despite knowing they will never fully succeed. That is the most human thing about them, and that is why they belong here. The arguments continued for hours. Representatives spoke for and against. Data was presented. Evidence was analyzed. Old fears and new hopes were voiced in 1,000 different ways. Then Dr. Sarah Martinez was invited to speak. She was not a diplomat or a government official. She was just a philosophy professor from Earth. But her interview months ago had resonated across the galaxy, and the council had granted her permission to address them. Sarah stood in the center of the chamber, a small human surrounded by hundreds of alien beings. She looked terrified and determined in equal measure. I am not going to argue about our qualifications, Sarah said. I am not going to defend our technology or our achievements. I want to talk about what we can offer you. She took a deep breath. You have peace. You have stability. You have systems that work. But from what I have seen, you also have loneliness. You have isolation. You have species that exist side by side but rarely truly connect. We watched the recordings of Captain Zare's first visit, Sarah continued. We saw how surprised your crew was when we offered them food and comfort. We saw how shocked they were when a child approached a fearsome warrior and asked to be friends. Those things are normal for us. We don't consider hospitality a burden. We consider it a joy. She looked around the chamber, meeting as many eyes as she could. Humans form families from strangers. We adopt animals from other species as beloved companions. We cry at sad stories and laugh at simple jokes. We feel things deeply and share those feelings freely. Maybe that makes us weak in your eyes. But I think it makes us human in the best possible sense. If you let us join you, Sarah said, we won't just be members of your council. We will be your friends. We will argue with you. Yes. We will make mistakes. Absolutely. We will probably drive you crazy sometimes. But we will also care about you. We will celebrate your successes and mourn your losses. We will treat the galaxy not as a place we joined, but as a home we have been waiting to find. Her voice grew stronger. You say we are dangerous. But we are also the species that looked at the stars for thousands of years, and never stopped hoping someone was looking back. We are the species that built monuments and sent messages into space, believing that someday, somehow, we would not be alone anymore. We are the species that when we finally met you, welcomed you with joy rather than fear. So yes, Sarah concluded. Let us in. Let us be part of your galaxy. We promise we will make it worth the risk. The chamber was completely silent when she finished. Then slowly, something unprecedented happened. A few representatives began to stand. Then more. Then dozens. Within moments, nearly half the council was on their feet. A gesture of respect that transcended species and culture. Sarah looked around in shock, tears streaming down her face. She hadn't expected this. None of the Earth delegation had. Speaker Moravaith called for the final vote. The question was simple. Should Earth be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council with full voting rights and responsibilities? The voting took place in silence. Each representative entered their decision privately. The results were tabulated by the Council's ancient computers, systems that had overseen galactic democracy for thousands of years. The numbers appeared on the main display. In favor 400 against 27 cis. Abstaining 35. Earth had, not unanimously, but decisively, more than enough to grant membership. The chamber erupted. Some species cheered, others sat in stunned silence. A few walked out in protest. But the decision was final. Earth was now a member of the Galactic Council. Ambassador Chen stood with tears in her eyes. Around her the Earth delegation embraced, laughed and cried together. They had done it. Humanity had found its place among the stars. But the real changes came afterward. Within weeks, Earth began formal diplomatic relations with hundreds of worlds. Human engineers started collaborating with alien scientists on projects that combined their different approaches to technology. The results were remarkable. A human engineer from Japan worked with a Trinali physicist to develop a new type of energy storage that was more efficient than anything either species had created alone. Human doctors partnered with alien medical specialists. The combination of human creativity and alien precision led to breakthrough treatments for diseases that had plagued multiple species for generations. A human surgeon from India developed a new technique based on alien biology that ended up working better on humans than traditional methods. Human artists collaborated with alien creators. A human musician from Brazil composed a symphony that combined Earth instruments with alien sound generation, creating music that could be appreciated by beings with completely different auditory systems. It became the most popular composition in galactic history. But the most important changes were cultural. Humans approached galactic society the way they approached everything, with enthusiasm, curiosity, and a total disregard for established boundaries. A human teacher from Kenya started an exchange program that brought human children to alien worlds and alien children to Earth. At first, many species were skeptical, but the children became friends immediately, ignoring the differences that made adults nervous. Within a generation, there were millions of these friendships spanning the galaxy. Human restaurants opened on alien worlds, serving Earth food to curious beings who had never tasted anything like it. Alien restaurants opened on Earth, introducing humans to thousands of new flavors and experiences. Food became a common language, a way to share culture without needing words. Human sports became popular across the galaxy. Soccer was particularly successful, simple enough for almost any species to play, but complex enough to remain interesting. The first Galactic Soccer Championship drew teams from 200 worlds. The final game was watched by 50 billion beings. A team from Earth lost in the semi-finals, but nobody cared. The game itself was the victory. On Earth, alien culture flooded in just as fast. Human students studied alien philosophy, alien art, alien history. Human scientists learned new approaches to problems they had struggled with for decades. Human governments adopted some alien organizational techniques while keeping their own chaotic diversity. The colony worlds, Earth's long-separated cousins, began reconnecting with their home world. At first the meetings were awkward. 40,000 years of separation had created very different cultures, but the genetic connection remained, and with it a sense of shared identity. The Proxima colony sent a delegation to Earth. When they arrived, Representative Mira stood on Earth's surface for the first time and wept. "I am home," she whispered. "After 40,000 years we have come home." But the relationship was not one-sided. Earth sent teachers, artists and scientists to the colony worlds. They learned from their cousins as much as they taught. The exchange enriched both sides. 5 years after Earth's admission to the Council, Speaker Maravith attended a celebration on Earth. The United Nations had organized a galactic festival, inviting representatives from every member species. The event was held in a massive open space in Geneva, with areas designed for different atmospheric and gravitational requirements. Maravith walked through the festival, observing everything carefully. Humans and aliens mixed freely, talking, laughing, sharing food and story. Children of a dozen species played together in a specially designed playground. Artists from multiple worlds created collaborative works in real time. Captain Zur found Maravith standing near a stage where a human Trinali musical group was performing something that combined jazz and Trinali harmonic resonance. The result was strange but beautiful. "What do you think, Speaker?" Zur asked. Maravith was quiet for a moment. "I think we made the right choice," she finally said. "But I also think I didn't fully understand what that choice would mean." "How so?" "I thought we were allowing Earth to join our civilization," Maravith explained. "I didn't realize they would change what civilization means. Look at this." She gestured at the festival. 5 years ago, most species barely interacted outside of official council business. Now they gather like this regularly. They are becoming friends, not just allies. "Is that a problem?" Zur asked. "No," Maravith said softly. "It is a miracle. We have been so careful, so cautious, so afraid of conflict, that we forgot how to connect. The humans reminded us, or perhaps they taught us for the first time." As if to prove her point, a small human child approached them. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old. She held a flower in her hand, one of Earth's native roses. "Are you the speaker?" the child asked Maravith. "I am," Maravith replied, kneeling down to the child's level. "My teacher said you helped let us join the galaxy," the child said. "Thank you." She offered the flower to Maravith. Maravith took the flower with trembling hands. "You are welcome, little one." The child smiled and ran off to rejoin her friends. A group that included 2 Trinali children and what appeared to be a young Kazathi. Maravith stood up, still holding the flower. "They do this," she said quietly. "They just do this naturally. They see a stranger who helped them and give them a gift. They don't calculate the political implications or wonder about proper protocol. They just do it because it feels right." "That is humanity," Zur agreed. "For better and worse." "Mostly better," Maravith said, surprising herself with the admission. 10 years after Earth's admission, the Galactic Council commissioned a study on humanity's impact on galactic civilization. The results were astonishing. Economic growth had increased by 40% across all member species. Technological advancement had accelerated dramatically. Cultural exchange had reached levels not seen in 10,000 years. Most surprisingly, reported happiness and life satisfaction had increased significantly across multiple species. The study concluded with a statement that became famous. "Humanity did not join our civilization. They reminded us how to be civilized." Not everyone was happy with the change. The preservation faction still argued that humanity moved too fast, took too many risks, and disrupted established order. They were not entirely wrong. Humans did cause problems. They pushed boundaries, questioned traditions, and made mistakes. But they also apologized when they were wrong. They learned from their mistakes. They adapted and grew, and they inspired others to do the same. Commander Throck, the Kazathi warrior who had advocated for humanity from the beginning, wrote a book about his experiences. It became required reading in militaries throughout the galaxy. The final chapter was titled "What Humans Taught Me." In it, Throck wrote, "I spent 300 years as a warrior. I learned how to fight, how to command, how to win. But I never learned how to care until I met a human child who wanted to touch my scale. The humans taught me that strength without compassion is merely violence. They taught me that courage without kindness is just cruelty. They taught me that the greatest victory is not defeating your enemy, but making your enemy your friend. The book sold billions of copies across hundreds of worlds. 20 years after first contact, Ambassador Chen retired from her position. She was old by human standards now, but she had witnessed something few beings ever see: the transformation of galactic civilization. At her retirement ceremony, attended by representatives from every council species, Chen gave a final speech. When Captain Zur first arrived at Earth, Chen said, "We welcomed her as a friend, not knowing if that was appropriate. We offered food and comfort, not knowing if it would be accepted. We expressed joy and excitement, not knowing if those emotions would be understood." Now, 20 years later, I look at this galaxy and I see those same gestures everywhere. Species that once communicated only through formal protocols now share meals and laughter. Beings that once viewed each other as strangers now form friendships that cross every boundary. "We didn't do this alone," Chen continued. "We couldn't have. Every species here has contributed to this new way of being together, but I am proud that humanity helped start it. I am proud that we looked at the careful order of galactic civilization and asked, but what if we were also friends?" She smiled, and even after 20 years among aliens, her human smile still had the power to make others feel welcome. "We are not perfect," Chen said. "We will never be perfect, but we are here, and we are yours, and we are home. Thank you for letting us in. Thank you for giving us a chance, and thank you for becoming our family." The ceremony ended with something that would have been unthinkable 20 years earlier. Representatives from 800 species stood together and sang a song. It was a human song originally, written centuries ago, but it had been translated and adapted by dozens of species. The lyrics spoke of connection, belonging, and the joy of finding others in a vast universe. As the voices rose together, human and alien alike, Captain Zur stood beside Speaker Maravith in the audience. "Do you remember how worried we were?" Zur asked, quietly. "I remember being terrified," Maravith admitted. "I thought humanity would destroy everything we had built, and instead," Zur prompted. Maravith looked at the representatives singing together, species that barely acknowledged each other before, now harmonizing as friends. "Instead," she said, "they showed us what we should have been building all along." Across the galaxy, on Earth and 1,000 other worlds, beings watched the ceremony. They saw the future that humanity had helped create, a future where differences were celebrated rather than feared, a future where strangers could become friends, a future where chaos and order could coexist, creating something more beautiful than either could alone. And they were astonished, not because humans had joined them, but because humans had transformed them into something better than they had been before. The galaxy had found Earth after 50,000 years of searching, but in the end Earth had found the galaxy's heart.